Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to another time of Bible teaching. I was not planning to put out another video today. I got a great one, a long one coming about wars, and then a shorter one about wars in Israel coming out tomorrow, which will be really cool. But today I put out a video about when James told us to look for the rapture. And it's about the former and the latter rains. It's a really, really cool video. But everybody kept asking the same question. Well, not the same, not everybody, but a lot of people asked the question, when is Rosh Hashanah? Um, and I could tell you it's on Tishri 1. That's not going to help. But the thing is, it doesn't correlate to the pagan Roman calendar that we use, January, February, March. And it is, it's a pagan Roman calendar. It's not God's calendar. It was made up by Rome. And they just don't intersect that way. And actually, the calendar that's used by Israel is not quite the calendar that God set up because it has been standardized. It doesn't mean we throw it away and get rid of it. We know how to make adjustments. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. That's why I can't just say it's going to be on this day, and you'll see why as we go through. So let's open up our Bibles. This is still a Bible study. And we're going to go to Leviticus 23, and we're going to see Rosh Hashanah. Of course, it won't say Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah just means head of the year. It's a new year of years, not to be confused with a new year of months, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's here. It is the Feast of Trumpets, and actually, it's not even that. It's a memorial of blowing. Speak to the children, and then the Lord said to Moses. It's a direct quote from God. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. That's a rehearsal. So as they rehearse this, that's going to show us the fulfillment. And it says, you shall do no customary work on it, and you shall offer an offering made by the fire to the Lord. So it is an appointed time. It is a Sabbath, but it's the first day of the 7th month, the 7th month of Tishri. So when is that? Well, when is the first month? You got to count from the first month. See, in Israel, there's actually 2 calendars. Okay, there are 4 calendars. 4 New Years in Judaism. And I think I can just go here and get to them. Yeah. So you have 4 New Years, and 2 of them don't really matter for our sake. See, Nisan 1, that's in the spring, is a new year for kings and for festivals, for feasts. It's for the religious calendar. See, Tishri is the head of the year, but it's in the 7th month. This is the first month. It's a new year for months, whereas Tishri is a new year for years. There's 2 different New Years. Can you have a regular calendar and a fiscal calendar? 2 different calendars? Of course you can. So God has 2 different calendars. So let's go to, and here's where people get confused. Let's go to Exodus 12, and then we'll go to Deuteronomy 16:1, I think. I'm just doing this off the cuff, but Exodus 12. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, in other words, direct quote from God, this month shall be the beginning of months. See, that's a new year for months. It's not a new year for year. And it shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak to the congregation of Israel. On the 10th day of every month, you shall take for himself a lamb according to the house of his father, a lamb for his household. So this is Passover. We know it's in the spring. Nisan, what we call Nisan today. So we're looking at Nisan and Tishri. All right, let's go to, by the way, a lot of people will take this and just say, God moved Rosh Hashanah. God doesn't change. Rosh Hashanah is actually found it only shows up one place in Scripture, and it's in Ezekiel 40. Understand Ezekiel 40 through 48, those chapters are all about the millennial reign. Ezekiel 40, verse 1, in the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, the city was captured. On the very same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he took me there. Isn't that amazing? You know what? Years ago, I'd read all those numbers, and it's like, let's go on to the good stuff. All right. So beginning of the year, that is, okay, this is like,
Strong's
I don't
H,
like,
6242.
oh, stop that.
Esprim. Esprim.
All right, in the your captivity, in the beginning of the year. See, Rosh Hashanah. And it's not, this is the Hebrew, and, and it's pronounced Rosh Hashanah, and we just transliterate it and put whatever English letters we can together to make it come out. So this is where it's at. But notice here, it's the new year, at the beginning of the year on the 10th day of the month. When does the new year start on the 10th day of the month? Well, that's a year of Jubilee. You look it up in Leviticus 25, and it is also in the 7th month. See, there are people out there who have been teaching you, or some people, that this says that God changed the beginning of the year and Rosh Hashanah was moved to the spring. And that is a bad teaching. Okay, so anyhow, so you have to set Nisan and count 7 months. It's not as easy said as done. Go to Deuteronomy 16:1, and I'll explain something to you. And this will all make sense if you give it a little time and let it sink, and it's not that complicated. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. So it's the Passover, and it's when they came out of Egypt. That's Nisan, right? Why does this call it Abib? Well, Nisan is actually, I believe, an Aramaic term from when they were up in Babylon. In the first 5 books of the Bible, Torah, there's only one month that's given a name, and this is it, Abib. Everything else is the 3rd month, the 5th month, the 7th month. But this isn't really a name. It's more like a description. Because if we look up Abib, what's it going to tell me? The month of Abib right here, if I look up that definition, young, fresh, young barley ears, barley. The month of ear forming, the greening of the crop, the growing green Abib, the month of Exodus and Passover. This is all about the barley. Is the barley ripe? No, it's almost ripe. So when the barley is almost ripe, you start the month. What happens if the barley's not almost ripe? If it's not almost ripe, you don't start the month. So we don't know when that first month happens until in the spring. And they don't do this today in Israel. You know, they set up the Hillel calendars and they do leap month. Yeah, they add extra months into the calendars. I think it's 7 or 9 times out of a 17-year period, they add an extra month into a calendar year. It's called Adar 2. You won't find it in Scripture because it is definitely not biblical. You're supposed to let it set by the barley. Well, how do we know when that is? Well, there are groups in Israel that are dedicated to restoring the biblical calendar, and for 25 years or longer, they've been going out in the fields and examining the barley. So we wait till the spring and we wait to hear what they say. Unfortunately, they don't come back and say the barley is Abib or it's not Abib. They come back and give you a description of what they found, and we have to figure out what that means. So now the question is, why would God do such a thing? Isn't this silly? You have to set it by the barley. Well, one thing is it keeps the spring feast days in the spring and the fall feast days in the fall. There was a time when there was a 360-day calendar and everything worked perfectly. But somewhere along the line, might be when God set the sundial back, with, I think it's Hezekiah, but the calendar changed. And I believe there'll be a day that the calendar changes back. During tribulation to 360 days. That's another story. But why would God do this? What is so important about this darn barley? All right, let's go back to Leviticus 23. So you have the Feast of Trumpets. Let's go back before this, though. Passover. Okay, so Passover starts at the 14th of Nisan. So Passover is set by the barley being almost ripe. But let's go. We have unleavened bread and then the Feast of Firstfruits. What happened at the Feast of Firstfruits? Messiah arose. No, he didn't arise on Easter. That was made up by Rome as well. He arose at the Feast of Firstfruits. And if you don't understand it, go and look up how Easter is calculated. It's crazy. And you won't find it in Scripture. Okay, the New King James Version puts an Easter in there. But if you look up that New King James Easter and you look up the definition, guess what it says? Passover. They even had the wrong day. But anyhow, let me keep going. Speak to the children of Israel when they come into the land, and I will give you, and reap its harvest. Then you shall bring a sheaf of the firstfruits of your harvest to the priest. He shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted on your behalf. And on the day after the Sabbath, let me see, the Sabbath is Saturday. The day after the Sabbath is always going to be a Sunday. So the Feast of Firstfruits is always a Sunday. Yeah, God didn't change the Sabbath. On the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, and you shall offer on that day. By the way, if the firstfruits is holy, then the whole harvest is holy. Is anybody else thinking out there, like you should be, that Messiah is the firstfruits to the resurrection of life? Somewhere in here. Christ the firstfruits. Afterwards, those who are coming, has become the firstfruits of those who have fallen asleep. For if the firstfruits is holy, the lump is also holy, and if the root is holy, so are the branches. So Messiah is the firstfruits. This is about his resurrection. You notice they're not doing a stalk or a little piece of barley. It's a sheaf. It's a bundle, not one individual. What happened when Messiah arose? Go to Matthew 27, like verse 50-ish, somewhere in there. Matthew, verse 20, or chapter 27, somewhere around 50, 51, maybe? Here we go. 50, I got it right. What do you know? And Jesus cried out with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. Well, that's the same thing that a father would do with their robe when they lost their firstborn son. And the earth quaked and the rocks were split and the graves were open and many bodies of the saints had fallen asleep and were raised. And coming out of their graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So along with Messiah, a lot of other people rose out of their graves. Messiah didn't arise alone. That was the sheath of the firstfruits. A harvest has three different parts. The firstfruits, which was Messiah and these people here. It has the main harvest, the rapture, and then it has the gleanings, the little stuff in the corners that you pick up and the stuff you dropped on the ground. Remember, Boaz told his things to, like, leave more of the gleanings, let Ruth pick them up, because the poor could go into a field and pick up the gleanings. The gleanings are the tribulation saints, anybody who didn't take the mark of the beast, that didn't die, who walks into the millennial kingdom, and the remnant of Israel who was in Petra for 3.5 years. There's your gleaning, the three parts of the rapture. So it's very, very important that when you're going to have this feast, the first fruits, that you have the first fruits of the barley, because it's a picture of Messiah. If you had a feast of first fruits and the barley wasn't ripe to pick and there were no first fruits, or the first fruits were the month before, that's not a picture of Messiah. You follow? So we're going to have to wait until the spring to see when it would be. Bottom line, it would be August, late August to early October. That's the ballpark where it would normally happen. Now you can Google and just say, okay, when is Rosh Hashanah in 2025? And it will tell you September 22nd to September 24th. But guess what? If the barley came in and was Aviv early, that would change to somewhere around August 22nd to 24th. And if it wasn't ready at the time it's supposed to be, then that would change to October 22nd to 24th. So we're going to wait till the spring. And I'll tell you another thought that I used to have. These are the thoughts I used to have. Well, it's a fall feast day. It's got to happen in the fall, so it has to come after the summer solstice. No, excuse me, after the fall equinox. Guess what? There is no place in Scripture that calls them the fall feast days. There is no place in Scripture where it talks about a fall equinox. That was just something out of my imagination. The other thing I used to do when Rosh Hashanah would come, well, they might have the calendar wrong. Let's give it another month. And then I gave it another month after that. I didn't understand God's calendar. So again, once we get the barley reports in the spring, in like April, March and April, we will know when Rosh Hashanah will be in 2025. But guess what? We still won't really know, because if you go to Scripture, Rosh Hashanah is what day of the month? The first day. So if you looked up the word month in Hebrew, you're going to find Hodis or something like that. I believe it's what it is. Yeah, Hods right here. Look at what it means. Look at the definition. The new moon. Two witnesses still have to see the new moon. So you still won't know when that day starts until the new moon is seen. Thank you for watching. May God bless you. Have a good day.